you will hear part of a tutorial between two students and their tutor. The students are doing a research project to do with computer use. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. In the exam, you would have 30 seconds to look at the questions. Pause the recording for 30 seconds now. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Dr. Barrett?
Sammy, come in. Is Irene with you?
Yes.
Good. Sit down. Right, we're looking at how far you've got with your research project since we last met. You decided to do a survey about computer facilities at the university, didn't you?
That's right. We decided to investigate the university's open access centres and, in particular, the computer facilities. Lots of the students are having trouble getting access to a computer when they need one, so we thought it would be a useful area to research.
Good, fine. It's not a topic anyone has looked at before, as far as I know, so it's a good choice. So, what background reading did you do?
Well, we looked in the catalogues in the library, but we couldn't find much that was useful. It's such a specialised subject, hardly anything seems to have been published about it.
And as well as that, the technology is all changing so quickly.
But the Open Access Centre has an online questionnaire on computer use that it asks all the students to do at the end of their first year. And the supervisor gave us access to that data, so we used it as a starting point for our research. It wasn't exactly what we needed, but it gave us an idea of what we wanted to find out in our survey. Then we designed our own questionnaire.
And how did you use it?
We approached students individually and went through our questionnaire with them on a one-to-one basis.
So you actually asked them the questions?
That's right. We made notes of the answers as we went along, and actually we found we got a bit of extra information that way as well, about the underlying attitudes of the people we were interviewing, by observing the body language and things like that.
How big was your sample?
Well, altogether we interviewed a random sample of 65 students, 55% male and 45% female.
And what about the locations and times of the survey?
We went to the 5 open access computer centres at the university, and we got about equal amounts of data at each one. It took us 3 weeks. We did it during the week, in the day and in the evenings.
Not the weekends?
No.
So presumably your respondents were mostly full-time students?
Yes. Oh, you mean we should have collected some data at the weekends from the part-time students? We didn't think of that.
OK, it's just an example of how difficult it is to get a truly random sample. So, how far have you got with the analysis of results?
Well, everyone agreed there was a problem, but we're more interested in what they think should be done about it. The most popular suggestion was for some sort of booking system. About 77% of the students thought that would be best, but there were other suggestions. For example, about 65% of people thought it would help if the opening hours were longer, like 24 hours a day.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. In the exam, you would have 20 seconds to look at the questions. Pause the recording for 20 seconds now. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
So, what other suggestions did people come up with?
Well, actually, the main reason why people can't get to a computer is because so many students are using them for personal emails or just surfing the web. So one solution would be to have some computer rooms for recreational use and some for people to do serious work in. The trouble is, quite often people do their work, then they want to check their emails, and it would be a nuisance if you had to get up and go to another room and log on again just for that.
Another problem is that during the day, tutors book whole blocks of computers for complete sessions, so several people said there should be restrictions on block bookings. But the trouble is, the classes need the computers. There's nothing else they can use. Some people said the whole problem would be solved if the university would just buy more computers, but other people said it might make things better for a bit, but it wouldn't really solve the problem permanently. You can't just solve the problem by throwing money at it.
And with the suggestion that the computer room should stay open round the clock, some people did point out that there'd have to be someone around all the time to make sure the equipment didn't get stolen, especially at night.
So a booking system seems to be the best suggestion.
Yes. Apparently some universities have a sort of queuing system. It means the staff at the open access centres have to organise it, but people say it works quite well. You go along, and if there isn't a computer free just then, you're given a numbered ticket, and then when your number is called out, you have the next available computer. Or it can be done electronically as well, but that's more complicated, and it isn't really necessary.
Good. So, now let's discuss...
Now turn to Section 2 on page 129. Section 2. You will hear a tour guide talking to a group of tourists who are visiting a historic town on the east coast of the USA. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17 on page 129. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Right. So here we are in Fairhaven, and we have a couple of hours to spend in this historic center before we carry on to our motel. And as you'll know from the itinerary of our trip, we're visiting Fairhaven because of its historical links with a man called Manjiro Nakahama. So I'll begin by giving you a brief overview of his life, and then you can explore the town at your leisure. Well, Manjiro Nakahama, as he was then known, was born in 1827 in a village by the sea in what is now Toshishimazu in Japan. And like many people in that town, he became a fisherman when he was just a youngster. One day in 1841, when he was just 14 years old, he and some others were fishing far off the coast of Japan when they were caught in a storm and shipwrecked on a small deserted island. They had to wait for 6 months before they were rescued by an American whale ship that had stopped at the island by chance. 4 of the 5 Japanese were put ashore in Hawaii, but Manjiro had become friends with the captain, William Whitfield, who came from the town of Fairhaven, where we are now, and he chose to remain aboard and to return with the boat to the USA. So Manjiro unwittingly became the first Japanese ever to set foot on American soil. He came back right here to Fairhaven with Whitfield and stayed with the Whitfield family, who paid for his education here in the town. He studied mathematics and geography, as well as shipbuilding and navigation. But he missed his mother and his own country, and eventually he went back to Japan, where he had a responsible position as a university teacher, and also served an invaluable role as interpreter during the initiation of relations between Japan and the United States in the middle of the 19th century. But the most interesting thing is that the links between Toshishimizu and Fairhaven have remained and grown stronger over the years, in spite of the distance between them. And in fact, the two places now have the official status of sister cities. Both places are ports, so in fact the inhabitants have a lot in common. There have been a number of visits by the inhabitants of Toshishimizu, in particular at the time of the festival, which is held every 2 years here in Fairhaven to celebrate the life and achievements of John Manjiro. It takes place in the fall, and there's an ever-growing program including drumming, singing, martial arts, and stalls selling Japanese and American food. So if you're going to be in the region around then, it's really worth a visit.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20 on page 129. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
Now, many of the buildings that Manjiro Nakahama knew in Fairhaven are still standing today. And so if you'd just like to hand round some copies of this map, I'll suggest the best route to follow to see them. Okay, so if you look at the bottom of the map, you can see the Millicent Library, and that's where we are now. Now, to follow the John Manjiro Trail, you go out of here along Center Street and then head up Main Street until you get to Pilgrim Avenue. Go down there and turn right at the end. Go straight on, and just on the corner with Oxford Street, you'll see a 2-story house. This is the Whitfield family house, and this is where Manjiro first stayed when he came to Fairhaven. It's still a private residence, so please respect the owner's privacy. Okay, now if you carry on along Oxford Street, then turn left at the end, you'll come to North Street, and about halfway down there is what's known as Old Oxford School. This was the very same school that Manjiro attended when he lived here. It was considered to be the best school in town because of the quality of the building. Unusually, it was built of stone, and the quality of the teaching. Nowadays, it's usually closed, except on special occasions. Go on to the end of North Street and turn the corner onto Adams Street. If you follow the road down back towards the library, you go round a couple of sharp bends, and on the second of these, you can see the School of Navigation, which Manjiro also attended. And if you follow the road on, you'll soon find yourself back here at the library. And I'd suggest you spend some time looking around that too, if you have any time left. Right. Now, does anyone have any questions?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. You will hear 2 students and a tutor discussing their plans for next year. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24.
Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Mark. How's it going?
Oh, hi, Lily. I'm okay. Have you decided what course you're going to apply for, then?
Yes, illustration. I've already applied to one college, actually.
I didn't even know there were places that did just illustration.
There aren't many. Most combine it with other areas like painting and graphic art. Unfortunately, there are no courses in London, so I've opted for Birmingham.
Birmingham? I'm not sure I'd want to study there.
Well, from what I've heard, you're thinking of not studying anywhere, Mark.
Look, I haven't made any decisions yet, but I'm wondering what the point of carrying on at art school really is. I mean, why not just get a studio and paint?
Aren't you enjoying art school now, then?
Yes, I am. But this is a foundation course, isn't it? I wanted to try out all the different areas. You know, sculpture, computer graphics, a bit of everything. Now I know that I really just want to paint, though. I may as well get a studio and do it.
There's nothing more for you to learn, then.
I didn't say that.
This isn't all about a fear of being rejected, is it? I mean, I know you hate applications and interviews and so on. You're not looking for a way out of all that, are you?
No, of course not. I'm no more scared of rejection than anyone else. I mean, people not buying your work, that's real rejection, isn't it?
Now you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen to the next part of the conversation and answer questions 25 to 30.
Hi, do you mind if I join you?
We were talking about next year and applying for courses.
I couldn't help overhearing. What's this all about then, Mark? Is it true that you're thinking of not continuing at college?
I'm looking at other options, yes. I've been reading about artists who claim there's no real advantage in learning formally. There's this Scottish guy who just went to Paris and got a studio. He's doing really well now. In fact, one of the fine art students here dropped out of her course at the end of the first year and just went to Prague. She loves it there.
You might just be looking through rose-tinted spectacles there, Mark. There are plenty of people who regret taking that route, you know. For every artist making a living, there are 20 living on the breadline.
OK, I take your point, but I'm thinking about the cost of 3 years at art school as well. Apart from the actual fees, there are all the living expenses. Students are running up at least £30,000 debt by the end of their course.
So this studio you're planning to get, I take it that'll be free then? If you're contemplating working in Paris or Prague, won't that cost practically the same over 3 years?
Maybe, but I'd be selling my paintings, wouldn't I?
In fairness, Mark, very few artists start selling work just like that.
Yes, but will studying for another 3 years mean that I will definitely be able to sell my work?
It won't guarantee it, but it'll make it more likely. In my opinion, anyway.
Remember that there are plenty of artists who make their name while they're studying. Art schools put on end-of-year exhibitions, and influential people regularly come in looking for talent. Your work is showcased in a way that just won't happen if you're working in isolation.
Yes, I do see all that. I'm just not convinced. I sometimes question the value of a creative course, full stop. I mean, I often feel almost guilty when I tell people that I'm studying art. I see this look on their face as though they think I should be doing something more useful. I feel that if I get a studio and start working, at least I'd be paying my way.
I think the key factor here is that being at art school exposes you to critical appraisal. Perhaps the most essential function of further education is the constant feedback and constructive criticism. It's essential to personal development, no matter what the field is.
Yes, we all know artists who paint as a hobby, people who've been doing it for years. They think they're experts and wonder why other people haven't recognised their talents. If only they'd become part of a creative community, they'd understand why that hasn't happened.
Yes, I think Lily's right. It's important to keep developing and responding to feedback. Anyway, don't go making any rash decisions. Come and see me.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You are going to hear a lecture about the geographic information about Australia. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40 by choosing the best answers from the choices.
Good morning, everybody. We'll continue to look at Australia, and today look at one of its greatest natural challenges, water for the agricultural sector. As the only nation to occupy an entire continent, Australia has a unique environment, with much of it very flat and dry. One notable feature of the Australian continent is that it is the lowest of the continents. The average elevation is less than 300 metres, compared with the world's mean of 700 metres, and its highest mountain is only 2,228 metres, so it is overall a very flat country. It is also dry. In fact, Australia is the driest, after Antarctica, of the continents. Yet Australia has extremes of climate and topography. There are rainforests and vast plains in the north, snowfields in the southeast, deserts in the centre, and fertile croplands in the east, south, and southwest. And Australia contains some of the wettest areas on Earth. In western Tasmania and on the northern Queensland coast. But half of the continent has an annual rainfall of less than 300 millimetres each year, and only 20% has more than 600 millimetres each year. A major problem is that the limited water resources do not match up with where water is consumed. The major water resources are in northern Australia and Tasmania, whereas most of the agriculture and people are in southeastern mainland Australia. The agricultural sector is the largest consumer of both self-extracted and main-supplied water, using over 70% of total net water consumption. Electricity and gas supply, and water, sewerage and drainage services use notable amounts of self-extracted water. However, net consumption in the household sector is the lowest, just 8% of total net water used. Australia's water use increased by 25% over the decade between the mid-1980s and mid-1990s. Much of this increase was due to irrigated agriculture, which, as noted earlier, accounts for over 70% of national water demand. Since the mid-1990s, the growth and profitability of irrigated agriculture has outstripped the dryland agriculture sector. Irrigated commodities contributed almost a third of total farm exports in the mid-1990s. The results of a special government report in 2000 showed that if today's water use arrangements continue, the water needs of the rural industries will outstrip water availability by about 2020. Irrigated agriculture, Australia's major water-using sector, would be seriously affected by the shortfall. And although groundwater underlies large areas of Australia, it accounts for only 4% of water use. So, clearly, apart from water for households, which mainly comes from dams or rivers, it is the rural sector where efforts towards water conservation are particularly directed. In this sector, the largest consumers of water are the meat and wool industries. One of the major problems in considering sustainable agriculture is the large amounts of irrigated water used to produce these products. Some of the crops, such as wheat, maize, and soybeans, also use a lot of water. Furthermore, many crops are grown in dry areas, where up to half the available water evaporates from the soil surface or seeps down too low into the ground for the plant roots to reach it. Well, that's all we have time for this morning. You will be able to do further study on this topic in the library, and I have a handout here with references for those who want to come out to the front to collect it. Next week, we'll look at outback farming and...
This is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answer.